as you can see today, we have a lot of books. You probably have seen a lot of these videos and these gurus saying, hey, you gotta read more, and people bragging that they read like 100 books a year or one book a week.
So in this video, I want to share 10 of my top tips for reading more consistently. And if you follow the tips in this video, then there's a high chance you might even be able to read 100 books a year.
Honestly, I think that is absolute BS. Not that it's not possible, but is it actually useful? And maybe because I'm biased, I'm a super slow reader. Personally, I don't have a big library and I don't read a lot of books in a year, at least relative to my other smarter friends. But when I do read, I read extremely deeply to the extent that I integrate them into what I call my council of advisors. These writers that I know so intimately that I'm able to think like them, and therefore I'm able to pull them out at critical junctions in my life to help me out. As the Roman philosopher Seneca said, you should be extending your stay amongst writers whose genius is unquestionable, deriving constant nourishment from them. If you wish to gain anything from your reading, to be everywhere is to be nowhere. A multitude of books only gets in one's way. Think about it. We don't need more content in the world. We need a lot more curation as well as intentionality about what is it that we're actually consuming, digesting, and then utilizing in our life. So today, I want to walk you through my 3-step system from selection to absorption and finally to utilization. This is how I make the most of the few books I do read. First, selection. After I had written one of my Epiphany newsletters on reading, subscriber Maximilian actually asked, hey, I love the idea of reading less but absorbing it better. How do you find or choose the books to focus on? The answer is that I learn best through necessity, to have a real life reason to read in the first place. I feel like a lot of people tend to consume books like Netflix and then try to find something to use this new hammer on. For me, it's actually the opposite. So for example, I picked up Marcus Aurelius's Meditation because I was going through a really tough time in life back in London. And it just found me in the right place and time where it gave me a framework to work through a lot of my internal struggles, as well as to finally start seeing the true nature of the people that were disappointing me in life. I picked up Prisoners of Geography because I wanted to understand more about geopolitics in the wake of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, because it was another oh shit moment that I was like, what is going on here? This doesn't make sense. But of course, after reading this, it made a lot of sense because countries act based on their geography constraints. That's why there is a geo in politics. Sometimes I pick up books because I really want to understand someone, be it a new client, a new relationship, or a friend. The best way to deepen those connections is ask them what their favorite book is and actually read it. Then you'll get a really good sense of why this book was really informative for them and how it influenced them. In fact, that's actually how I came across Mindset Secrets for Winning, because one of my consulting clients said that he was trying to improve his life by improving his mindset. And little did I know, this book blew open wide a new field of subconscious hacking for me that has led to a lot of my success in recent years. Finally, I don't always finish the books that I start. The ones that I do end up extending my stay with are those that I really resonate with. And how do I know what resonates with me? Well, it's because I'm taking down notes on almost every single page, which gets into my absorption technique. How do I actually turn this knowledge and integrate it into myself? Tip number 1 is to take it slowly. Often for these new council members in my repertoire, I'll take minimum 2 weeks to actually go through. I'm not trying to blast through the material. I'm actually trying to have an actual dialogue. The way that I imagine it is I'm actually sitting at a cafe, having an intimate conversation with the writer, which means that as I'm going through the book, I'm asking questions, I'm taking notes in between the lines, and I'm anticipating what they're trying to say. When I ask a question, The power of questions is that I am trying to reconstruct their mind. If you've seen the movie The Matrix, you know how Neo straps into a Kung Fu module and he comes out going, I know Kung Fu. It's very, very similar to that. And here's the thing, it's actually slow at first, but then there's an acceleration of understanding once I understand the fundamental components of the book. And that's the case for going into any new field, in fact. The other technique that I like to use in order to fully absorb the information is to draw diagrams. Using the same book, Mindset Secrets for Winning, this is where I utilize the blank spaces in the back of a lot of these books as valuable personal notes where I can redraw the diagram in my level of understanding. Right here, I drew a graph to represent how to cultivate a winning mindset or empowering mindset by assigning a lot more emotional weight to our successes. And on the flip side, if we are making mistakes, we don't want to beat ourselves up over it, which is the equivalent, the negative equivalent, assigning emotional weight. Instead, we should be a stoic or a scientist to coldly analyze it and to dampen its emotional weight. So weak on the negative emotional weight here, be stoic, be tiger on the upside. And this is really important because so many of us actually do the exact opposite. We beat ourselves up over our mistakes and it's just like milling around in our head constantly. But anyways, I wanted to just show you the different ways that I basically translate my learnings into my own through diagramming. Finally, one of the most important things that you can really do to solidify your knowledge is think about what are the big ideas in these books. Because I consider it a huge win if I can get even one big idea per book. And I'm combining it with my personal life experience. I own that knowledge and I have shaped that fundamental core concept into pretty much everything I do. This is what it means to be a first principle thinker, which means that you're absorbing, you're fully understanding these big ideas, these big concepts from each of these books, and then you're assembling them into Lego blocks of new constructs that you can actually use in your daily life. Hey there, if you are finding this video helpful so far, please consider giving it a like because it helps me out a lot. And if you want to go deeper, I have an extended learning edition in My Map Nation that covers advanced examples that didn't quite make it to YouTube. Check out the description below for more details. All right, let's get back into it. I'll give you one final example of how I diagram and transform these learnings. I have The War of Art, which is a phenomenal book by Steven Pressfield. Anybody who is doing anything creative on your own or thinking about entrepreneurship should read this book because he puts a real solid face to this resistance that we all feel when we're trying to do something new, when we're trying to realize our full potential, but can't. There's this really good chapter around fear. Are you paralyzed with fear? That's a good sign. Fear tells us what we have to do. The more scared you are of a work or a calling, the more sure that we have to do it. I try to synthesize into one diagram what that resistance between me right here to my unlived life. There's this force field that I have to go through. What is this force field? What do I need to do? What does resistance look like? Well, it's indifference. It is rationalization and lies. It's trying to go towards the easy path in life, the comforts, the lack of self-confidence component, the public versus personal. And then I go, okay, what is the path that I must overcome, that I must take in order to get to my unlived life? Remember, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And even better than that is your own picture in your own understanding. Draw more pictures, guys. This is the Tao Te Ching. I actually mark up my books like crazy. This is one of my favorite passages from the Tao Te Ching, which is the reason the sea can govern 100 rivers is because it has mastered how to be lower or being more humble. And here I actually drew a picture to convey that, where all rivers lead to the ocean. The higher you rise, the more people above you. The further you lead, the more people ahead of you. This really speaks to the philosophy of servant leadership. There's another example for 63 about act without acting, work without working. AKA the effortless way of living. I have exclamation marks, I have questions right here. How does one take inspired action while tackling what's hard? It's a genuine question. I'm trying to figure out, okay, like how do I make life easy even while I'm doing something difficult? And I started answering my own question, which is know how to direct the river's flow. The insight is understanding the nature of things and then being true to one's nature. What I learned from Tao Te Ching is that whenever sometimes feels like I'm pulling teeth, like it's so freaking hard that I can't even move an inch, that I've got so much burden, it's usually a sign that I'm on the wrong path, that I need to slow down and think. And this is where it's like a little bit different than Stoicism. What I just said about the war of art, very much about focus and discipline. And the Tao Te Ching is about flow and effortlessness. I actually take into account both. What I believe in is you want to align your actions to your nature. If you are aligning your actions to who you truly are, your essential self, the key to life is often finding the stuff that is easy for you, hard for other people, and then building something on top of that. Easy to say, hard to do. Literally what Naval Ravikant also says, who is a legendary investor, this is how the best startups are actually formed, which is us solving our own problems. The Tao Te Ching itself, it took me 3 months, 90 days to finish this, because each of these passages, this is a verse. The Tao Te Ching is a collection of 81 verses or poems. This particular translation has commentary from other sages from the last 2,000 years. I can only take one of these verses, these 2 pages per day, because it's this dense. But this is what I mean by truly mastering the material. Because now, after 3 months, going through one book, I can not just recite the Tao Te Ching on command, because recitation is actually quite useless and very overrated. I understand its concepts at a fundamental level and have integrated into my life. The final tip that I will give, and this is for audiobooks, you can use that note feature, then pause, and then dictate the audio notes. That's how I accumulated so many notes around Be Water, My Friend. I started this as an audiobook, but I fell in love with the material so much that I got the physical book. And I'm writing entire paragraphs for each of the paragraphs that Shannon Lee is talking about her father, Bruce Lee. Therefore, the knowledge, this dialogue with the author, this cafe talk really integrates into my own being. That's when I'm able to take it into action. Which, now let's talk about that. If you did a good job with the selection process, which is starting with necessity, then you automatically have a way to use this knowledge. Because anything you learn, you either use it or you lose it. It's much better to have a systematic way to utilize the information that you're absorbing. Even better if you have an active project and it forces you to go down a rabbit hole in order for learning. For example, I picked up the PE playbook because one of my consulting clients wanted me to help him start a new private equity fund, which I knew nothing about. So I needed to ramp up the learning curve crazy fast. And he had sent me only 3 videos to begin with, and I mapped those out completely. And one of these days, I'll do an actual video about how I sprint up the learning curve in new fields. But just know that after those YouTube videos, I was like, wow, this particular thinker is someone that I want to prolong my stay with. And I got his book. I dissected through his entire book so that I could even learn more about PE and how it's formed than my client. That's the nature of consulting. In order to solve somebody else's problem, you actually have to understand the nature of the issue and the solution even better than they can in record speed. So that's one way, which is to have an active project that forces you to read. Number 2 is to turn it into an output. For example, the act of creating this YouTube video is me basically reviewing back to all these books and going, oh yeah, these were the big ideas I wanted to share with you, as well as sharing how I do this process, how I read, how I absorb information, and how I turn into action. I also write blog posts, my newsletter, right? Sharing some of my learnings that way with an audience. You can also have a designated time with your partner, with your friends. You can have a book club, but not any book club discuss the insights, but actually incorporate them into your daily life. The final way is to have a systematic way of translating it into action. My preferred method is 2-week sprint, whereby I learn something new about visualization. And here it says, we gotta have the right practice. This is typically what everybody focuses on. But then through good visualization, you're gonna improve your performance, which then improves your self-image and confidence, which creates this virtuous cycle with increased confidence equals better performance, equals better practice, better visualization, and so on and so on. If this is the case, then damn, I definitely want to try this out on my 2-week sprint. Let's say I'm learning a new instrument, the handpan. I'm not exactly a musically talented person in the world. So the way that I would begin is get a course, but then practice visualization and practice putting more celebratory energy or emotional weight on getting some of the rhythms right. I would do that for 2 weeks. And honestly, I saw some really massive improvements in that short amount of time because, again, I'm putting into use what I learned in a very systematic way that I'm just gonna focus on this particular technique for 2 weeks. That's how you're gonna get the best results. If you are interested in turning more of your knowledge into action and tangible results, definitely check out my masterclass on the 2-week sprint. You will definitely not be disappointed. All right, guys, until next time, take care.